cabinet officials are political appointees across all of the agencies. The ones that currently exist leave on inauguration day, right? And they make room for the incoming president to bring in their cabinet heads. What systems are in place to prevent the transition from affecting national security and other essential government functions like Social Security, healthcare, things like that?
So there are 4,000 political appointments, and they represent the very senior most leaders of the federal government. There are 2 million career civil servants that are there on the basis of merit. They've been selected through a merit process, and they're apolitical. It is not the case that all the political appointees have to leave. So I would say that the smart new president does their best to try to keep as many of the prior leaders involved and engaged as possible. Former President Obama kept Secretary Gates over as the Secretary of Defense, especially when you have the possibility of a same party transfer of power. There is even more opportunity, I think, to have a large scale continuity. But it is a tricky moment. It is worth the public understanding that even if there isn't a political appointee in place, there will be an acting official in charge, and it will most likely be a career professional who frankly probably knows the issues and how to work in government better than anybody else. So to that end, we're safe. We've got great people who are in place short term. They're a little bit like the substitute teacher. They may be an excellent educator, but you don't really expect them to be there over the long term, and therefore it's hard for them to do that job really right.
But to be clear, the incoming president, doesn't have to keep any of them. If that person so chose, they could wipe the entire 4,000 person slate clean if they wanted to.
Correct. All the political appointees serve at the pleasure of the president, and that means they are at-will employees who are there as long as the president wants them to be, and once the president wants them to go, they got to go. That is the minority of the federal workforce. It's still a large number. I should say, just by comparison, that most other democracies count their political appointees in tens. Maybe they get to 100, and we're pretty much unique in having 4,000. It's way larger than any other Western democracy or similar country like ours.
Now, below that, there are many people in the government that are not political appointees. Would you mind just breaking down a little bit of the political appointees and then people within agencies that run things or that have integral roles within our government that are not political appointees?
Yes. So the workforce in total is a little more than 2 million people for civilians. There's obviously a very large and important contingent of uniformed public servants. Of that 2 million plus, there are 4,000 that are political appointments that are chosen at the discretion of the president and that serve at the pleasure of the president. A subset of those 4,000, 1,300 or so, require Senate confirmation before they can get their position, and that is a constitutional prerogative of the Senate. When you look at the career workforce, worth noting that about a third of it constitutes veterans. 80+% live and work outside the Washington, D.C. area, and they're chosen on the basis of merit. They are chosen because they're viewed and after any number of different kinds of selection processes as the best in class for the jobs. And that's an important distinction. We have an apolitical merit-based system. That's been true really ever since we had a president assassinated in 1883, President Garfield, when we still had the spoils system. And it was a disgruntled job seeker who assassinated Garfield. And there was recognition that that is frankly no way to run our government if we want one that is not corrupt or incompetent. And it's been a long trajectory, but it's been for the last 140 years, bedrock principle that you want professionalism and apolitical merit-based process for your career civil service.
You had spoken a little bit about the cabinet officials and the confirmation process that they go through. So there are several of these key roles that are cabinet secretaries, and the Senate does need to confirm them before they can actually start and execute any kind of an agenda. Can you explain what that process is and what the president goes through before their cabinet members and their officials actually become, the appointees actually become sworn in and begin working officially?
So like any large organization, the leader, in this instance, the president, really matters, but it's a team effort. And who the president picks in their cabinet. The cabinet is sort of the primary agencies of our government. That really matters. And getting them into place is also vital. They can't do their jobs if they haven't actually been both nominated and confirmed to do them. And that is part of, again, our constitutional process, that the Senate has a voice here. It's the advise and consent role. President nominates, the Senate has to confirm them, or they actually cannot be the cabinet secretary. That process can be, pretty lengthy one. First and foremost, on the side of the president-elect, they should have been vetting various candidates, the people that they think would be best situated to run these agencies. Really important point is that they are very large organizations. And so you really want people who are capable and ideally have had experience running very large organizations. They are vetted. They have to go through a security clearance process, a full field investigation by the FBI. They have to have their finances cleared by the Office of Government Ethics. And then all sorts of paperwork has to be filled out, sent to the Senate. They'll have a hearing by a committee of the Senate, and then ultimately a floor vote by the full Senate and before they can actually be confirmed and then take office. So that process is difficult and often time consuming. Usually for cabinet secretaries, it happens a lot faster than for anybody else, but it is not an easy process to go through.
But even for cabinet secretaries, we've had and may well again have a divided government. Can they be delayed indefinitely?
So they can be delayed indefinitely. At the end of the day, there's no requirement that the Senate actually confirm anybody. And presidents often take a long time to actually nominate people. It has real consequences. You have to have somebody in charge. But if you have an acting official, I mentioned this earlier, my metaphor for it's a bit like the substitute teacher. As an individual, they may be an amazing educator, but it's very difficult for them to actually get a whole lot done. They don't get respect from the class nor from their peers. And really importantly, they're unlikely to take on the difficult issues or think long-term. So having confirmed leaders in place is really important to get good outcomes from government. Unfortunately, the process is so difficult that there are often real gaps in leadership, and the tenure of leaders who are ultimately confirmed is often very short. And that creates long-term problems for our government and ultimately for the outcomes that our government is responsible for.